Hello everyone, you're listening to the Earful Tower podcast. My name is Oliver G. This is a show that's brought to you by French Today. French Today. Now, if you go on their website, frenchtoday.com/earful11, then you will get a further 10% off all your audiobooks. I'll be talking about them at the end of the episode. But what is this episode we're listening to today? Let me tell you, it's a best of, and it's the first time I've ever done something like this. If you're new around here, you might not know the way things work. And the way things work is that every 6 months or so, I do a season. I call it a season. There's a little bit different from the last season, and they tend to end with a bit of a bang. And that's exactly what happened with last week's episode. It was the recording from the big live show I did at the Australian Embassy. Go and listen to that if you haven't already. But while we're between seasons, I thought I'd put together a best of about sweet Paris, food in Paris, people doing interesting things with food. So there's little snippets from a bunch of the past episodes that I've done. The idea being that you guys can get a little, excuse the pun, but a little taste of Paris and maybe listen to some people that you haven't heard before. Go back and check out their episodes. So you're going to hear from David Lebovitz, Clotilde Dusoulier. You're going to hear from Tal Spiegel. Remember him, the guy that matches his shoes to pastry on Instagram every day? Ended up on the front cover of the Oprah magazine. Well, to a degree. You'll hear about that in a sec. Tour guide Pett, Michael Huffman, who used to give chocolate tours around Paris, and Amanda from Boneshaker Donuts in the 2nd arrondissement. That's all to come. Let's get straight into it, I think. Here comes the jingle. So because it's a best-of episode today, none of the typical rules apply, so expect me to chime in here and there with things like listener email right in the middle of the episode, or expect me to explain things like little behind-the-scenes stuff. There's no rules. We're in kind of podcast purgatory right now. This is a bonus episode, and I'll start by answering a common question I get. That little intro jingle is the intro to a song called Go For A Ride by the local Paris band Slim and the Beast, and it's the same song that plays at the end of every episode too. So for you guys who've been emailing, I typically respond to these emails, but if you're wondering yourself, Go For A Ride is the name of the song. I don't know if it's been released. It was written specifically for this show, but that's what it's called. Check out the local band Slim and the Beast. Now, sweet Paris, Paris food. I've done a handful of episodes about Paris food. I'm no expert on food, so I don't go into it all that deep, all that often, but when I do it properly. So what you're going to hear today are people who are experts in this field, and I think there's nowhere better to start than with Pett, the tour guide, who's been on the show a bunch of times. She once came on the show. We had a comical misunderstanding where the episode was about Emmanuel Macron, the president, and she came in and talked about macarons, the delicious bite-sized treat from Paris. So let's start off with that one.
Let's start at the very beginning.
Okay, so
Macron is the president. That much I know.
Macron is the president,
okay.
Emmanuel. And macaron
Macaron
is a delicate little French pastry that kind of looks like a hamburger. Okay, and it's
a
made
really
with,
small hamburger.
Yeah, made with almond paste
Yeah.
And very flavorful these
Gotcha,
days.
yeah.
And then a macaroon
Yeah.
is American version.
Okay.
Not version, but it's kind of like a coconut cookie
Okay.
that's dipped in chocolate.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah,
But let's stick
okay.
with macarons then.
Macaron.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
let's do your story on macarons.
Okay, because actually, macaron. People are always saying, April, what should I get to bring back home after my time in Paris? What is the hot thing on the shopping
you say
list?
Earful Tower tote bag, and they go, I've got an Earful Tower tote
They do.
bag.
Most of them have it already,
Yeah.
and they just need things to put in
They
it
wanna
to
fill it.
bring
Yeah.
home.
Okay.
And so, macaron.
Yeah.
That's what everybody kind of wants to taste and buy and bring back as souvenirs, even for themselves. I bet half of them don't make it even back to their home countries because they get into them on the plane.
Sure.
Now,
Don't tell me you brought macarons in today to the studio. Don't tell me. That's a no. Okay.
well, we'll have to take a peek into my Earful Tower tote bag.
Oh, my Lord.
Once we're done here.
Okay, go on then. Okay, macarons. So
Okay.
you're telling people to take them home. They're
Yeah.
obviously tasty.
They're tasty.
Where are we meant to be buying them from?
Well, my favorite place in Paris to buy a macaron is Pierre Herme.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, you need to check it out. He's just opened a huge store.
Who's he? Is that the man? Pierre Herme?
It's the pastry chef.
Right.
Yeah, who does these marvelous, delicious little creations, and he's just opened up a shop on the Avenue des Champs-Élysées, number
Oh, yeah.
86. And his flavors are absolutely stunning. Like when macarons were first being baked, they were just plain.
Right.
They were served without any flavors or fillings and just made of almond paste, basically.
And then Pierre Herme came into the room.
Well, he's not the one who actually started adding the colors and flavors, but these days he's like very cutting edge because he is adding different ganache and filling between
The hell is a ganache?
Ganache is like a jam, okay?
Yep.
It's the filling to the macaron. So he fills the hamburger buns basically with the ganache, but he also is mixing away from the traditional sweet flavors, but he's putting a spin on it, mixing sweet and savory flavors.
Right.
Over the holidays, I just had a caviar and green walnut
Caviar
flavor.
and green walnut. I would pair them.
Yeah,
I'd pair them.
And he also did a fig and foie gras macaron, which is
right.
pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Tantalizing for the taste buds.
So I've never bought macarons in Paris.
Okay.
And if I was buying them as a tourist,
Yeah.
do they give them in little boxes of 6 or something?
Yeah, you can buy them in boxes. Well, when you buy at least 6, you can get a decorative box too,
Right.
which is always nice as a keepsake
Sure.
afterwards. Like
Well,
my friend is a teacher, and so she puts like her pencils and pens for class in her.
Hang on, what, like a wooden box?
Yeah,
Really?
or
Cool.
tin box. Yeah.
That's cool because I was thinking they're quite fragile macarons.
Yeah. So they're great to transport like that. But you can always just go in and just buy one, and they'll serve it to you on a nice little napkin, and you can just,
So is
enjoy
that
it
is
in
that
the
a
street.
recommended thing you think to take someone to go and buy a macaron?
Oh, 100%.
I've
yeah.
never done that before. I've got to start doing that.
Yeah. Actually, for my friend who lives in Australia, she loves passion fruit, and Pierre Herme did a chocolate and passion. Well, I believe he still does. And for her birthday, I sent her one, like a mega size one. Okay.
Right.
And I wrapped it in all this bubble wrap, and I posted it to her in Australia,
Yeah.
and it got there in one piece. It was
Really?
amazing. Yeah. She
Wow.
was so happy. So
That's nice.
Yeah. But that's kind of like the hot thing to buy these days.
Got it. Okay,
Uh-huh.
good tip. And thanks for the language fix-up.
Well, there you have it. That was April Pett. She's a friend of the show. Book a tour with her. Let her know that you found it through the Earful Tower. April in Paris tours. Now, in that little snippet that you heard, which was incidentally from season 3, episode 2, you will have heard I didn't know what Pierre Herme was, but I've since rectified that after she recommended it. I went and found one of the shops down near the Jardin de Luxembourg where I had some kind of raspberry flavored croissant, and it was delightful. Can recommend. You can go and sit in that park and eat it. Now, as with a lot of the tips you're going to hear in this show and going forward into the future, they've all been written into the Paris guidebook that I wrote, which is going to be on sale real soon. It's a PDF of all the arrondissements stacked with tips from guests and from my own tips. I just released it for Patreon supporters. So if you fancy getting your eyes on that, if you're coming to Paris, there's about 250-ish things to do in Paris, laid out really nicely, arrondissement by arrondissement. So by district. And you can go and check that out if you become a member. Otherwise, it'll be on sale soon. Now, from April Pett, the tour guide to, well, one of the most foodie guys that you're ever going to hear on the show. His name's David Lebovitz. You've surely heard of him before. He was, I think, a lot of people would have heard when he was in my book club and we dissected the book L'Appart, where he talks about renovating his Paris apartment. But what you maybe didn't know is that he was among the first guests to ever be on the Earful Tower. So he was on, what you're about to hear is from season 1, episode 10, which is about 2 years ago. And at this point, I'd never met David. And I invited him to the studio. It was a fairly new podcast. And I put him on the spot. I did the A to Z, or for you American listeners, the A to Z of French food. And so, for example, I said, C is for croissant. Where's the best croissant in Paris? And it was like a baptism of fire. I really put him on the spot all the way through. And what you're about to hear is his answer for M, where I said, tell me your favorite market. And the whole episode was really quick fire, but in this one, he took a bit of time to explain it, and it sounded really good, so I think you should check it out, including the market that he mentions. But Dave's a good sport because if I were him, I would have written me off after that experience, putting him on the spot for half an hour. But luckily for us all, he's become a friend of the show and been on several times since, and hopefully again. But here you go. What is your favorite market, David Lebovitz?
Okay. M is for market in Paris. Which is your favorite market first? And then I got a follow-up question.
Okay.
Food market.
Well, my favorite is the one, I would say the Marche d'Aligue. That's my favorite. It's a great market. It's every day but Monday, and it's big. It's changed over the last 10 years, but it's really diverse. There's, lower end stuff. There's higher end stuff.
Can you walk us through it? Imagine you're walking through and tell us what you do.
I arrive there and I kind of look at everything first. And I walk down the main street. Then I go to the flea market in the middle and look, I go through the boxes where everything's like 50 cents because I've gotten cheap in my older age. I'm becoming French. Sometimes I go have a glass of wine at the Baron Rouge, or I get a little baguette apéritif from Moisson Bakery, which is a salty, savory kind of little baguette just to snack on. Then I go back and get all the stuff I want to get. I go to the Grenetterie du Marché, which is a fellow, his name is Jose, and he's super nice. He's très gentil. And I get beans or whatever I need to get from him, or herbs. Then I'll go to different stands that I like, that it gets, certain things like fresh. If someone might have like sour Seville or sour oranges, I'll say, oh, it's time to make jam. Or I'll go to somebody else and I'll go inside the covered market and get cheese. The people who are right at the entrance have amazing cheeses. I get really good Comté there.
And how often are you going to these markets?
Well, I go to the market twice a week. I usually, like most Parisians, I usually go to the market closest to where I live because they know me. And it's important to go back to the same place over and over again in France. A lot of tourists go, we're going to go to all these different restaurants and go to all these different cheese shops. I'm like, no, go to the same one every day, because the second or the third day you're there, they'll remember you and you'll be much more a part of the Sorteur year.
There you have it, David Lebovitz from Season 1, Episode 10. Proud to have him as a friend of the show. But you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip for a second before I get to the next one, and I'm going to read out an email right in the middle of the episode. Gmail, I typically call it. This one's from Alan Warnock, who messaged me recently. He said, hello, Oliver. I'm a long-time listener, but a new supporter on Patreon. In case anyone at home wonders what it is, it's how this show sort of exists, really. People subscribe for a membership, and they get all kinds of bonus content. To people like Alan, he says, I don't know what took me so long, but I do know what caused me to finally support your excellent podcast. I took a 2 to 3 month hiatus from your podcast and every other podcast I listened to, and you know what I learned? I missed you, man! As I caught up with the Earful Tower, I realized how much I enjoy your lighthearted banter and really insightful guests. So I decided it was well past time to become a supporter. Wow, thanks, Alan. This is what I like to hear. He says, I listened to your podcast in the car from Melbourne, Florida. There's a plot twist. Not Melbourne, Australia. I wonder if you pronounce it differently there. In Australia, we say Melbourne, almost like Melbin. But I assume in Florida, you say Melbourne. So I listened to your podcast in the car from Melbourne, Florida. And then he goes on, talks about the beach, some extra stuff. But what I want to read here is he's read the guide because he's a new Patreon supporter. He says, thank you for your terrific Paris travel guide. I plan to use it on my next trip to Paris, which cannot come soon enough. I look forward to using your tips to explore Paris like a local. That's the idea there, Alan. Thanks very much. And this is what he finishes on. He says, anyway, keep up the good work, and I'm sure I speak for many other listeners when I say, and I'm very intrigued to hear if you guys do think the same here, but he says, I speak for many other listeners when I say that any podcast that includes your lovely wife is always a treat. Oh, well, isn't that a sweet thing to say? Thank you for your support, Alan. And speaking of sweet and speaking of treats, here comes the next treat, which is from, back to the topic at hand. You're about to hear from Michael Huffman, another friend of the show. He's moved back to the States now, but he used to be a chocolate tour guide in Paris. What a sweet job, if you'll excuse the expression. Michael, we did a walk show, which is where we do a live video walking around. We were tasting chocolate. But in this particular episode, which was, goodness me, this was a while back. It was season 3, episode 24. Put him, I asked him, he brought in a list. See, I'd learned after 2 seasons not to put people on the spot so much, but he brought a list of the 5 best places to get chocolate in Paris. And you're about to hear a condensed version of his answer with all 5 tips. Here we go. But let's bring it back to Paris. And I did say that I'd ask you for 5 tips. And a lot of people that listen to this show, they're looking for tips. And we've never talked about chocolate tips. So you have the microphone. Recommend to the listeners 5 places they should go if they're going to check out chocolate.
Okay.
But you have to keep it quick, otherwise you will run out of time.
Okay, really quick. Okay, so we've got Jacques Genin.
You don't need to talk faster.
Oh.
just
Give a list.
yeah, go on.
Okay, Jacques Genin.
Oh, yeah, I think I know that one. Yeah, I went into that on a walk show with Cake Boy Paris.
Okay.
Frank, that one's nice. Yeah, yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
He's got the illegal ingredient, so
Does he?
that's critical.
Is that the one? He's just got one, not restaurant, what do you call it? One shop?
Yeah, he just got that one shop. He was not a chocolatier by trade. He was doing something else. He wasn't an auditor, though, but he was doing something else.
He was a podcaster, wasn't he?
Could have been that.
Oh, sorry, continue.
They're a little bit shishi in there.
Yeah,
you know?
this shishi. You keep saying shishi. Is that a type of bean, or is that a French word, or is that an American word?
Well, I mean, it's American.
Where are you from in America, by the way?
I'm come from Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah.
Anyway, I cut you off. Give me 4 more places to have chocolate.
So after Jacques Genin, I'd recommend Jean-Paul Havin, Hevin. So he's got a couple different places, a couple different locations in Paris, but he's got something that's pretty unique and kind of far out there. So me personally, I like unusual things, and he's got chocolate-covered cheese.
Oh, I like the sound of that too. Chocolate-covered cheese.
Yeah, he calls it like l'apéritif. So it's kind of like something that you would have early on, kind of like a savory kind of chocolate.
Oh,
it's
I like
really
it.
quite good.
What is it, hard cheese? What is it, melty, soft?
There are
kinda?
4 cheeses, and the 2 that come to mind are Camembert and Roquefort that are inside. And Roquefort is really salty, so it's kind of like a salty caramel. It's a strange combination, and honestly, the first time I took guests there, they were freaking out.
Really?
Yeah.
Hey, that's cool. It makes more sense than chocolate covered in cheese, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's whip through those other 3.
Yeah. So we've got Edouard. It's like Edward, but with a T at the end.
Edward. Yeah.
So
doesn't sound so good in English, does it?
No.
Edward.
It doesn't.
Edward, okay, yeah. And
He's kind of like the chocolate Nazi.
the chocolate Nazi.
Yeah.
Oh, as in like from the soup Nazi from Seinfeld. Yeah.
Depending on the day and depending on what hat he's wearing, he can get kind of like in your face.
Wow.
A little bit.
Are we going to go there?
We're going to go there.
We're going to. Oh man, I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said his press agent's got to get back to me, but he was just in New York Times and Vogue, so
Really?
he said it's okay. He likes having my guests there and intimidating.
Does he know you call him the chocolate Nazi?
No.
I hope he's not listening.
So sorry, Edouard, if you're listening.
But it's said in a kind way.
Said in a kind way.
Sure.
Patrick Roger is also good. He's fantastic, actually. His father's a chocolate chef as well for a long time. And we're going to also probably visit Bonnoir and Les Trois Chocolats. And those are 2 chocolatiers that are women. So the...
Chocolatiers.
Chocolatiers, yeah.
Because you can be a flaneur and a flaneuse, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Chocolatier and chocolatière.
Okay.
Peut-être.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
It might be, yeah.
So those 2 are run by women.
Yeah, and
Cool.
so she is the only woman chocolatier that's ever won an award for chocolate in France. So in 2016, she made this special chocolate, and I'll tell you why when we go through on our walking tour.
Oh, I like it. It's a teaser trailer. So there you have it. That was Michael Huffman. Now, when we're talking about sweet treats and things like that in Paris, it would be remiss of me not to mention another friend of the show, which is Amanda from Boneshaker Donuts. Now, if you've not heard of Amanda or her lovely cafe restaurant donut shop, it's got everything in there. I was in there the other day, actually, and it's been recently redesigned. So she was on the show season 6, episode 8, so not that long ago at all, last season, in fact, and I was talking to her about donuts and pastry, and I asked her, well, you're going to hear from it. Here comes Amanda from Boneshaker Donuts.
We wanted to open something together, and I had been doing pastry for so long, but it was always French pastry, and I knew that I didn't want to do French pastry in Paris. There's already plenty of people who do it excellently.
It's not an original idea that way. Exactly. You're at the drawing board, you're like, pastry, I'm good at pastry. Have they thought about this in Paris?
Exactly. Yeah, maybe. So we decided to do donuts.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So there was I think I said the same joke in the walk show that we did, but there was a hole in the market, like a hole in the donut.
Wah, wah, wah.
And then I specifically asked her about what Parisians think of donuts.
It's been really positive,
Yeah.
which is great. When we opened, we weren't sure if, well, actually initially I thought, oh, it's going to be, who doesn't like donuts? And then I had some of my French friends sort of instill that seed of doubt where they were like, I don't know that French people are going to really be going for the whole donut thing. So then I thought, well, I hope it's not just all expats, because it'd be nice to get, we're in Paris. I'd like to have some, Parisians come to the shop as well, obviously. So initially we sort of found out that French people had this idea of donuts in their head as kind of the like epitome of everything that's wrong with American food. Like they were like, they're industrial, like they're so fattening, they're gross, they're fried in oil, like it's like the worst of the worst. But when, you know, but they were curious, so people would start coming in, and once I explained, I was like, yeah, they're fried, okay? Like, can't get around that. They're definitely fried, and thank goodness they are, because it's delicious. But, you know, when I explained that, no, it's like dough that we hand make, it ferments overnight, like I'm here at the crack of dawn, rolling donuts out, cutting them out by hand. Like, that's something that's very familiar to French people, because it's the boulangerie, it's the patisserie.
Right.
So once you put it in those terms, it was like literally, aside from the fact that I'm frying them instead of putting them in an oven.
You're speaking the language that they understand.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why it really was such a good fit, because it's like, you know, it's pastry. You know, you can do the industrial version, of course, where it's, you know, you're making thousands a day, and you know, and it's machines who are doing the work and everything. But here, it's like, no, there's people here making them with their own hands. It's butter, eggs, milk, you know, all these ingredients you're familiar with. There's no weird additives. And one actual metaphor that I use a lot that French people really, it clicked with them, is they're like baguettes, because people would be like, how long, you know, can I eat them tomorrow, and blah, blah, blah. I say, no, you have to eat them, like, the sooner, the better. The sooner that I put them down in the case, that you eat them, the happier you're going to be.
So there you have it, Amanda from Boneshaker Paris. That was a fun episode. She's a great guest, and I'm already in talks with her about a return appearance on the Earful Tower. She's fun. Go and check out. She told me, you know, she said, so I popped in there. I missed their Halloween party, and I popped in there to have some donuts a couple days after. And she said that a lot of you listeners have been going in there and saying hello, and that you heard her on the show. So keep doing that. That lets people know that it's worth their time coming on the show. And that goes for everybody and everywhere that you go. If you see a guest that you heard on the Earful Tower, go and say to them, like, I'm not getting some cut of the donuts here. It's more about that people understand that people are hearing them. If everybody's sort of scratching each other's back like that, we're going to get more podcast episodes. So keep scratching, everybody. Spread the word. Now, let's get on to another past guest. This is a kind of fun one. There was a guy called Tal Spiegel, and he was... What he still does, I still follow him on Instagram. Every day, I think he still does it every day, he matches his shoes to a French pastry. And now you might be imagining, you know, like brown shoes and a croissant. It's much more intricate and detailed than that. I'm talking like wild, you know, like you're going to hear on the day that he came into the studio, he had these sort of really shiny pink shoes on, and that wouldn't be strange to see on his Instagram feed either. Anyway, he came into the studio and we had a little chat about how he came to be making such an Instagram account. So listen to this. This is Tal Spiegel. Tal.
Yes.
Welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, thanks for trekking up the stairs, man.
Oh, wow. That was quite a journey.
Yeah, well, now we're here. We got a view from the top. I'd like to talk about your outfit today. Because,
my outfit?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not something I usually do with guests, but yours is quite striking. You have matching beanie and shoes.
Yeah, there's always something matching to my shoes.
So this is, and the pink, I should mention.
Yeah, it's pink. Yeah.
So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, this is actually a good introduction to you, because color, shoes, this is what you're about, right?
Yeah, color is what I'm about, definitely.
You started matching your pastry to your shoes.
I did.
Put it on Instagram.
I did.
Next thing you know, you're on the cover of Oprah magazine.
Well, not on the cover, but yeah, on the, you know.
The word was on the cover, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
Okay,
something.
you weren't a cover boy, but you were on the cover of Oprah.
Yeah.
Come on, that's pretty cool.
That's cool.
So
yeah.
take me on the journey. How did you get? So one day you're sitting in the park, your shoes match your pastry.
No, it was like the story was a little bit more than that. I arrived here 3 years ago for patisserie school. I went to Ferrandi, and I decided when I arrived here, because I didn't really know the city and I really didn't know all the chefs, and I had like this thirst, you know, to really know like everything.
Believe me, I got that thirst too.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So, you know, I got here and I said like, okay, well, I'm going to school. After school, I can like go and research. And I started like visiting patisseries like every day or two. I went to one on the list, and then I bought it. I bought like a pastry, and I tasted it, and I took a photo. And I was looking for an interesting way to like have a catalog of all of the things that I try for myself, because it was like really important for me to remember what I try. I'm also a graphic designer, so it was like a mix of like putting all the graphic desserts and then tasting them, and then like documenting it. So I was basically taking like normal photos until one day, you know, I was with my yellow shoes and I bought a cake that was yellow.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is
Hang
good.
on a
This
sec.
is
These
good.
two match perfectly.
Yeah, there was a light bulb, and then there was like I took a photo and I posted it on my Instagram, which was like 500 people, it was
Sure.
like my family and friends.
Hey man, 500 is still a lot for me.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't say it like in a condescending way. It was just like it's good, 500.
Yeah.
So I posted it, and people really liked it. So I decided to give it a try again and again.
Lucky for you, there's infinite colors of pastry and shoes.
Oh yeah, that's the reason like I'm doing it, and also I have like a thing for shoes. So when I arrived to Paris, I had like 20 pairs, which isn't like compared to today, it's like nothing, but then it was like a lot.
Yeah.
So I had some like way to play with the shoes and the pastries when I started. It was like really like nice finding every time like walking around in the street with a bag of shoes and finding like the right match.
Is that how you do? Because I was watching. So,
No, not today, but when
But I mean, in
started.
general, do you go around with a bunch of shoes, or do you pick your pair of shoes for the day? And I mean, how do you do it?
Oh yeah, that's like the $1 million question. What comes first, the shoes or the pastry? But basically,
That's the question I ask every guest. I got to be honest.
exactly. So in my case, it's pretty simple. Today, because there are over 200 pairs of shoes in my house, and I cannot take them with me.
Of course not.
Yeah, the pastries come to the house, and then I make the match, and then I take the photo.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're making pastries as well, right?
Yeah.
You're a pastry. What does your LinkedIn profile say for your job? What are you?
Oh, that's always like the question that like I try to define myself, and at the end of the day, I'm a graphic designer for the past 10 years. I did like the design and art, and then I did like the change to patisserie. So for me, it's like I don't want to choose. So it's a combination of two. It's like I'm a pâtissier and I'm a graphic designer, and the result of it is the combination of the two.
Yeah, that's cool.
There you go, Tal Spiegel. And if you want to follow him on Instagram, Deserted in Paris, 2 S's for dessert, guys, not desert. Deserted_in_Paris. He has 317,000 followers as I look right now. That was quite an old episode as well. That was from season 2, episode 14. Not long after that episode, I had Clotilde Dusoulier on the show, season 3, episode 1. And we were specifically talking about marketplaces, and what you're about to hear now is how she talked about how to visit a market in Paris. Not necessarily sweet Paris, but definitely food related. Since I think we talked about it on the full episode, this one, but she was about to start podcasting. I think she's just about to release the first one. Believe it or not, her show, it's called Change ma vie. It's in French, unfortunately. But it's one of the top podcasts in France. In fact, it might even be the top one. I know it's right up there, way more downloads than this show has. If that's how you judge success, I guess it is how you judge success for a podcast. But she's killing it. So if you can speak French, if you want to listen to her podcast, Change ma vie, but you might know her better from Chocolate and Zucchini. That's her blog. She's been blogging forever. And here she is talking about marketplaces. Here we go.
I would say the queen of cooking in Paris. Maybe you wouldn't use that
I
phrase.
would not.
No.
I would not.
But you've
thank you.
you've been around for like when the internet was a baby. You're blogging in English, and this is something we got to talk about when we get to know you in a second. But first, we want to talk about the theme of the episode, which is food markets.
Yes.
Now, some people are afraid of like ghosts. Some people are afraid of the dark. Me, I'm afraid of French food markets, and that might sound silly, but it's true.
I wonder if you're afraid of people who keep the stalls at the food market vendors
Right.
rather than food markets. Is that what the issue
I'll give you
is?
some context, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to cure my fear and sort of help me and maybe like others listening to this on how to deal with food markets, because obviously you know food markets. We're going to talk about your book and your audio walkthrough food markets and stuff in a second. But the context is when I first went into a food market, I bought in Paris, and I'd been here. I was really new to the city, and I asked for some strawberries in really bad French. I was like, "Oh, can I have some strawberries?" That's not how I said it. I said fraise. And he goes, yeah, take these ones. Or take these ones. They're really fresh and nice. I said, I'll take the fresh and nice ones. 17 euros €17 for a punnet of strawberries. And so I was like, wow, that's really excessive, but maybe he's ripping me off, but I didn't know how to talk about it. There were no prices there, right? So then I walked a little bit further, 2 apples at another place, €4 for 2 apples.
So there's several things in there to unpack.
Yeah, this is like a therapy session.
It does feel like coaching, which I also do.
Right. What do you coach?
I do life coaching.
Oh, life coaching. Yeah, well, that's the podcast as well, isn't
exactly.
it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so first thing is to know that produce in Paris is typically expensive, especially fruit, because obviously nothing grows in Paris, and so things have to be brought in from outside of Paris, and fruit is typically fragile. So by the time it gets to those stalls, there has been a percentage of it that has been lost, and so you pay for the lost produce. Right. This is why it's more expensive than in the countryside, where it's just very local.
So you didn't really react when I said €17. So did you think that was a normal price for strawberries?
Depends on the strawberries, depends on the season.
Right.
So my recommendation is to always seek out seasonal produce, because that's when you will get the best flavor, but also the best prices.
Okay, so that's the good thing. We can get a few recommendations out of you while you're here.
Mm-hmm.
What about like this idea of when you're ordering, should you be asking for the price up front? Or?
So normally vendors have a legal obligation to display the prices in a very legible way. They also have an obligation to show where the produce comes from. So you know that whether you're buying Belgian strawberries or Spanish or French. In France, they typically specify the region. So you know if you're buying strawberries from Brittany or from the Perpignan or something.
Where's Perpignan?
Perpignan's in the south.
South, yeah, okay.
And but sometimes what happens is that if you go early, the vendor might not have had time to put up the prices.
Yeah, okay.
So then you would not have the prices, but normally you should have prices. You want to pay attention to what the price says, because whether it says the price per kilo, which is like a little bit like 2.2 pounds, or if it's the price per basket.
You can tell that you write recipes by the way that you're translating your kilos into pounds. This is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an oft used translation.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I mean, what else? I mean, so I'm walking down there. Should you compare between other people's?
So what I usually do, and what I recommend people do, is if you can get there early, as early as you can without it being torture, you just have more space to yourself and more time, and it just feels a lot less rushed and stressful. So get there early, and then do just a simple walk down, and take in everything. You know, look at things, pay attention to what things look like, what is present on different stalls. And I think there's real value to following your intuition to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just feel pulled towards, just something looks beautiful to you, and then you should just go and buy it. But it's nice to do first a walkthrough, just to get a sense of what's in season, what people have, what looks good where, and then you can walk back and buy the things that you feel are the best options.
That's good to know. That's a good tip. The walkthrough, like when you go to a...
Also, it just you just get a feel for what the place is like, and you kind of establish yourself as a shopper who is not just going to rush into a purchase. You just want to be the wise French person.
It's like Robert De Niro in Casino. You got to walk through your casino.
Yes.
It's like a market. It's like a casino, obviously.
Channel De Niro.
Channel De Niro. So there it is, Clotilde from Chocolate and Zucchini. You can visit that website, cnz.to, if you want to do the quick way, if you want to save a few keyboard strokes there. Now, that winds up what I've got in terms of the best of. I wonder if you enjoyed this episode. I hope so, because they take a little while to put together, and I've got other ones in the pipeline that I want to do. So send me your feedback. I love to hear what you have to say. But now I'm going to finish up with just a few words and then a little bit of French today. Firstly, the words. As I said earlier in the episode, the guidebook is out for Patreon supporters. Good time to become a supporter of the show. Patreon.com/The Earful Tower. Make sure you follow along on Instagram as well. I'm going to be putting out little highlights from this episode and links to all the people that I've mentioned. And I think you'll have a good time there. I'm enjoying the Instagram community. A lot more talkative than Facebook, and definitely more talkative than Twitter. I feel like they're dying out. Twitter's dying? Could be. Facebook? Could that be dying? Anyway, Instagram is where all the action is happening if you want to get in on that. Meanwhile, I got a lot going on behind the scenes planning the next season. I'm putting a lot of work into it, a lot more structured than normal. a few new sort of bonus segments, fun stuff that you can hopefully enjoy wherever you're listening. I've been getting a lot of emails from you guys at home, listening all over the world, which is really exciting. I wonder what you're doing right now. Jogging through a forest? Chopping onions? Where are you? America? Australia? Some people who listen on the Paris Metro? I always love hearing from you guys, especially when you're in unusual foreign countries. But just a few more words I'm going to read out before the French Today bit. I put a post on, speaking of Patreon, I put a post with some of the bonus pictures that were taken so beautifully by Paris with L&Am. I put it on there's a Facebook group for the members that, to be fair, I mean, most of it's on Patreon now, but every now and again I throw some pictures up. Just some lovely comments coming in. Lucy Sansom. She says, what a fine-looking group of Patreon supporters. Oh, no, she says partiers. Because I put up a picture of like me and maybe 30 Patreon supporters right in front of the Eiffel Tower on the Australian ambassador's balcony. And she says, I thought your Patreon-only behind-the-scenes podcast was thoroughly entertaining, just the sort of bonus that's well worth the monthly membership. How about that? If you guys are fans of this podcast and you want to hear a lot more, then believe it or not, there are bonus podcast episodes for members. You can find them on patreon.com/the Earful Tower. But the most recent one that Lucy's referring to is my helpers, my interns. I got all three of them who helped make the embassy soiree talk show, and we all sat in the studio and we just talked about behind the scenes. The funniest bit that's sort of been, the biggest laugh. The laugh was so big that when you looked at the editing on the podcast editor that I use, it went through the roof. It's when Juliana was talking about meeting the mayor of Montmartre, who showed up at the talk show that I did. He was in the crowd, and she had to ID check him. And she said her French isn't so good, and she was trying to make small talk with him, and we're all just having a good laugh. I asked her if she said the old salut mec when he walked in, or like, hey dude, but apparently she didn't. But that's a good episode. I think you guys will like it, especially if you're a fan of the show. There are some other really nice comments. Nan wants to know if I'm planning to turn into a talk show host and not a podcaster, but don't you worry about that. I'm going to keep going with a podcast at all costs. I love this podcast. Wow, look, there's too many comments to read. I'm going to save that for next time and get into a little bit of French today because they're the sponsor of the show, and you should check out their audiobooks. If you are thinking about doing audiobooks, what I can say for them, that's, maybe you haven't got access to a classroom. Maybe you can't afford to go to the expensive lessons in Paris or wherever you are in the world. They can be really expensive, I've noticed. But what's good about the audiobooks is you can do it from home. You can get a free taste tester if you want to try it out for free. Well, what's best is you can get a further 10% discount if you mention this show's name. In other words, if you go to frenchtoday.com/earful11, that 11 is because we're in November, if you're wondering why there's the 11 at the end there, 10% off. And they typically have discounts for different holidays and stuff. So if you time it well, you might get up to 30% off. And what I typically do at the end of the episode is I give you a little glimpse into their world and just teach you the kind of things that I've been learning and see if that sparks your interest to sign up as well. So, same thing, we're talking about food and drink and sweet Paris and restaurants in this very episode. I found a section of French Today where they talk specifically about that. So in Un Mois Paris level 4, so for 4 we're talking kind of intermediate French, there's 2 sections about visiting a restaurant. And as they usually do with these audiobooks, is they paint a story, Camille, the voice behind it, and a lot more than just the voice, as you probably heard in a recent episode, but they do study guides, questions and answers. And in these study guides, there's a few words I'd never seen before. Right now, I'm going to walk you through some French words related to restaurants I'd never heard before, and hopefully you can learn them too. So here we go. So first up, we're going to do a little sentence that you might, it's the kind of nice thing you want to hear from a waiter, but here's exactly how he will pronounce it. If the waiter or waitress were to come up to you and say, would a cocktail strike your fancy? Here's what he or she would be saying. Est-ce qu'un apéritif vous ferait plaisir? So I did my best on the pronunciation there, but you can listen to it and you repeat it and you repeat it, and she does it at different speeds. But there you go. Est-ce qu'un apéritif vous ferait plaisir? It's vous ferez, but if you get used to this French Today, she teaches you how to speak street French, ferait plaisir. Here are some other ones that are cool. Here's another thing you might have in a restaurant. Something that tempts you, sir, is quelque chose qui vous tente. Quelque chose qui vous tente. Something that tempts you? That could be something that you'd hear. Here's another couple. What about, how do you say to make a toast or to raise a toast? You say, porter un toast. Porter un toast. Here's another good one. When you're clinking your glasses, the word is trinquer. Trinquer. I would go as far as saying that's an untranslatable word. That's the clink, like to clink, but specifically for your glasses for a toast. Trinquer, trinquer. I hope you guys are repeating at home. Let's do one more before we finish. How do you think you'd say if something's crunchy? Crunchy food. Like a baguette. Croquant. That's when something's crunchy. Croquant. So if you were to say it's crunchy, you say ça croustille. There's a good one. Oh my gosh, I like that one a lot. It's crunchy. Ça croustille. C-A space C-R-O-U-S-T-I-L-L-E. And that's the one I'm going to try and use this week. I'm going to buy a baguette. I'm going to buy it in the shop. And I'm going to say, ooh, ça croustille. And I'm going to smile and I'm going to walk out. Hopefully I'll pay for it somewhere in the middle of that. But hope you enjoyed that little mini French lesson from me. Once again, FrenchToday.com/Earful11 for that additional 10% discount. You've been listening to the Earful Tower podcast. I'll be back with another episode in a week's time. Make sure you tell your friends, subscribe, buy some French Today audiobooks, and think about becoming a Patreon member. I'll talk to you in a week. Merci beaucoup. Ça croustille. Au revoir.